fortunate series of people moving on at the right time. I've been managing the IT department since about 2000. And my current role is associate director. We have 3 associate directors at the library, and it's kind of an unusual arrangement, especially for public libraries. One of our associate directors is for finance and facilities, sort of the big, hard, important stuff. One of the associate directors is in charge of services, being the CERC department, the youth department, the adult services department, cataloging and collections, and I'm responsible for products, basically everything that the library produces, whether that's events, or printed material, or websites, or software applications, or any of those kinds of things. It's kind of, it's a moment for libraries where we need to be realizing that our products may be as important as our services in terms of the way that our communities perceive us and how we provide value to our communities. So we've done a couple different things with using reach out to different parts of the community. Just to kind of touch on the website itself, one thing that we've got, and I'll mention this briefly, is we have AAD.org. We have integrated Google Translation into our website. Now, one of the things that, of course, is nice about Google Translation is it's free, and you really don't have to do anything about it other than set up the links. It was a little tricky, and you can see right, we have our target languages that are the most common languages spoken in our service area other than English. And so they're just links, and whatever page you're on, it will automatically translate that page into that language. So now, as you guys all know, machine translation is not an exact science by any means. And some languages are better than others, but it does the job in terms of getting the information out into a bunch of different languages. One thing that's about this is that really our biggest concern in launching the service was not so much the native speakers of these languages, who would generally be understanding of how machine translation sucks. It's more the scholars that are native English speakers in our community who we're worried about, who say, oh, look, the library's doing my target language. I'm going to go see how well they're doing. That was one of our biggest concerns going into this, is saying all those humanities scholars and the Romance languages people, they're going to go into this and say, oh, well, this is wrong, and this is the wrong tense, and this is the wrong, all that kind of stuff, because, they may not be quite as forgiving of Google Translate as an actual native language. So that was one of the biggest in Google Translate, is that if we get those comments, we can say to them, hey, you know what, you think it could be better? Just point at it and tell us what the suggestion should be. So there's a method by which those scholars have a way to contribute if they think the translation should be improved. And very quickly they say that that is a bottomless pit of improvement that needs to be done. So it doesn't usually, they get discouraged quickly and they're off back to their other projects. So that doesn't happen very often, but it's an interest of rolling out multilingual functionality, especially when you're using machine translation. I mean, there's a lot of, it's a pretty amazing thing that this is possible at all, and let alone that it happens on the fly in seconds for no cost. That's sort of, it says a lot about what informatics are going to be like in the 21st century, that here, barely into it, with, we're still kind of 15% of the way through the information revolution, we already have tools like this. I think that by the time it's all said and done and the information revolution is something that has happened as opposed to something that has begun, this sort of functionality is going to be built into people's glasses or built into their contact lenses or their pockets or those kinds of things, and the Google translation will be just a distant memory. So this is one part of our translation. We also do some brochures in multiple languages that you can check out later. But the one thing that we've done is we have this, I just want to cover this because this is actually using translation the way it's supposed to be. We have this product called GT System, which is a tournament management system for libraries. And basically it's to video game tournaments allow you to have local, national, regional leaderboards for all kinds of different games. And we offer this for free for any library who wants to use it, because it's another one of the amazing things about offering the web product, is that once you've developed it, the cost to develop it to the cost to offer it to an international audience is essentially zero. Now, of course, if it gets really big, you can have some scaling costs associated with it. But when your national audience is people at libraries, you don't really have to worry about it growing to the size of scale where you have to start worrying about bandwidth costs or those kind of things. So very quickly after launching this, we started getting interest from libraries overseas that are interested in using it. And while most people, especially in Western Europe, have excellent English skills, their service populations don't necessarily all have as broad English skills as they do as librarians. So one of the things that they wanted is they wanted to be able to translate it into their own language. Now Drupal has an outstanding framework for supporting human translation in different versions. You can, in the Drupal database, you can have a translated version of a node into every target language that you want, and you don't even have to worry about how that's offered to the user. Drupal takes care of all of it. So what we did is we used that functionality, and then we worked with some of our partners at other libraries to actually do the human translation. Let me just log in here real quick. So now GT System is available in several languages. So here's the English version, and of course, then we're going to move to a different site here. Our site is aadl.gtsystem.org. Here's what we've got going on, but each library gets their own site, and if we go to the Drammen library in Norway, you can see all of the terms across the whole website, or most of them, have been translated into Norwegian. And actually, Norway has two different languages. They have Bokmål, which is what this language is. It's the dominant language. Then they also have Nynorsk, which is spoken by some of the rural people in Norway. So they're trying to decide if they need to have two different language translations inside the Norwegian. And basically, we give them a list of all the terms that we need to have translated. Drupal comes with a lot of basic terms being translated, like days of the week and things like that. And they just get this file, they fill it out, they send it back to us, we load it, and we're done. And then they can put into whatever content they post it in their native language, and it's up to them if they want to translate it to other languages as well. So it's a really very easy and well thought out way to roll out multiple language functionality, and it's one of the things where Drupal has a really big advantage on some of the other CMSs that are out there. I know there's often, I get asked the question probably 3 times, Drupal or Joomla, because Joomla is a lot easier to install, and especially for people who don't have a library science background. Joomla doesn't require them to bring as much to the table in terms of understanding taxonomy and vocabulary, the way that those multiple lists of categorization can overlap. That's like the wall that a lot of people hit with Drupal. And there's, I think it's safe to say that there's a Drupal backlash happening in a lot of libraries, because libraries say, oh, everybody's doing Drupal, we need to get Drupal. They install Drupal, they're like, I can't understand Drupal, I don't understand, it's too tricky, I don't understand it. But for us, Drupal has really been the most powerful tool that we've ever rolled out in our organization. And it's gotten to the point now where our public doesn't touch our integrated library system anymore, except when they use the self-checks. That whole notion of the ILS that provides everything, to us, that's already dead. The product that our vendor was providing was unfit for human consumption. So we basically said, this doesn't work. We need to build our own layer on top of this to make it work the way that we want it to work for our users. And I think it'll be very interesting to see, as the open source library automation systems start to take off, how this whole product space is going to be really revolutionized by the rise of open source, because libraries are going to be doing what they want instead of the programmers who work for the companies doing what they want. It'll be very different story. So are we taking questions after each section, or are we supposed to do them at the end? At the end. So, okay, well, that's about 10 minutes. So thanks for your time, and I'll pass it on to Terry.
Well, I'm Terry Swaby. I'm manager of Outreach and Neighborhood Services at the Ann Arbor District Library. I've been there since the end of 2003, which is actually before Outreach and Neighborhood Services was even a department. So I came in a different position, and during the time that I came in, we were in the community with ESL. We found that there are a lot of agencies that are providing information, either classes or conversation groups or direct services for ESL, but there was no mechanism for people to communicate with each other about what everybody else is doing. So I was able to go to Eli and say, is there some way we can create a listserv just for an exchange of information, and we were able to make that happen. So now we have a means of communicating. And also we do we try to participate in community organization groups. Like there are a lot of service provider groups that are very sort of specifically targeted at different populations. So there's a Spanish Health Outreach Workers organization that meets once a month, and it's just people who provide services for for the Spanish-speaking population, so to exchange information. There's another one called Barrier Busters, which is a similar type group, but they really serve people who are low income and in emergency situations. So we try to make ourselves present, again, so that people are made more aware of our services. And likewise, we can, if sometimes we get approached by people and they have a need that we're not able to fulfill, we can in turn get them hooked up with somebody else who might be able to fulfill that. So sometimes we're just like a third party intermediary, which is an important role to play. So that's a lot of what we do in outreach. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but I'm trying to keep it focused on the particular, ESL or multicultural different languages. But economics plays such a big role in multiculturalism too. So you can't really lump everything together. It's really difficult. We know that within the different languages that are represented in this, in different cultures in our community, that there's a big discrepancy between lifestyle and income, and we can't assume anything about any one group. So it's just, I think a lot of it is just being open-minded and expect the unexpected, look for different ways, be creative, talk to people. I mean, I think Emily is a great example. She was really interested in what we were doing in our department, and so she called us and said, can I come and hang out with you guys and spend some time getting to know what you're doing? And we were more than happy to provide that. So I would encourage that too. If there's any interest that you have, come talk to anybody. Who isn't interested in sharing information about what they do? Or if somebody shows an interest, that's great. So that would be my bit of advice. But conclude with that. Pass it on to Lucy.
My name is Lucy Borg. I'm also at the Ann Arbor District Library. I'm a public librarian. I do cataloging. I do collection development, and the collections I develop for are our world language collections, which encompass about 24 different languages. These are fiction, nonfiction books for youth and adults, and now we just started a teen world language collection. I also do language learning materials, and these materials encompass books, CDs, DVDs, some cassettes still that are out, to learn all different languages. My first full-time library position was actually at the Library of Michigan in Lansing, and there I learned all about genealogy, government documents, and that. And then I followed that by working at the Novi Public Library, and their population is very similar to Ann Arbor's, but just on a smaller scale. The different diversity is very similar. And